Good evening, members, officers, ladies and gentlemen. It's a pleasure to be here as the chair of the best committee, as defined by Richard Hicks. I have to say I agree with him. It is the best committee. I would be a little bit naughty to suggest that the chair of the best committee therefore was the best chair, but it certainly is work that is really important, impacts everyday life of everybody in Medway, and I think will hopefully make great progress. I just wanted to say a few words around the fact that we have so many new members of the committee tonight, probably outnumbering those of us who ever sat on this committee previously, and that's a fantastic thing. It will bring a lot of new energy to the committee, but we also have the benefit of some great experience. We've got the benefit of having Councillor Filmer, the former portfolio holder, so I'm hoping that he will know where everything's buried and be able to help us dig a little bit deeper in terms of asking those probing questions. And that's really important because there's three groups represented here today, and we are a team. In this committee, whatever we are outside of this committee room, we're a team. We're trying to find the best answers, ask the best questions, and there's no great qualification for that. You just need a curious mind, and that's why the new members, we might stumble over procedure. I'll certainly stumble over procedure as a new chair, but there are no silly questions. I certainly don't want anyone to be scoffed at for asking something that might be absolutely apparent to somebody else. We're all here to learn, and hopefully we'll make some great recommendations that are so compelling that Cabinet won't be able to avoid taking them up. So with that, move on to the agenda, and we have apologies for absence. I have apologies for absence from Councillor Doe, with Councillor Brake substituting. Are there any other apologies?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Councillor Kemp unfortunately can't make it, so I'm going to substitute for him this evening. Thank you.
Thank you. We next move on to the record of the meeting. Can I sign the record of the meeting held on the 21st of March 2023 and the record of the joint record of committees held on 24th of May 2023 as correct? Probably only a handful of people in this room who were actually at that meeting, but if there's no dissent, agreed. Thank you. Urgent matters, there are none. Declarations of disclosable pecuniary interests and other significant interests. Are there any declarations? Excellent. Any declarations of whipping? Nope. Excellent. We'll move on to agenda item 5, which is petitions. That's pages 23 to 28 on your agenda. One petition referral this evening relating to parking in Barron Close, Gillingham, and we have a member of the public, lead petitioner, Mr. Gary Simmons, who is going to speak in support of his petition. If you'd like to come forward and take your seat at the front there, that would be really helpful. Just whenever you're ready, make a start.
And just, sorry, just
And press the little middle button on your microphone.
Yes. Okay.
Going thing. Progressively, and it's taken half of Barron Close away, basically, which is where I live, and 3 other petitioners are here now who also feel the same way, that we are literally losing our parking in Barron Close. Although our address is Pier Road, we have always used the back, and that is for decades, and I do think the council should have
You just press it once and it should hold on.
what the wider aspects would have been to people living around there, namely us. I think you've got correspondence, you've got photos, which probably give you a better idea of what I'm trying to say. And
just to point out to members, you will be aware there's a supplementary agenda with pictures that that Mr. Simmons has sent us.
Every time it goes off, just
yeah, it's pretty much caused a lot of stress, a lot of strain, which I don't think we really should have had, to be honest. The parking has been which is associated with parking, isn't it, even today? And I know like it's a nationwide thing, but I think it's been enhanced by the permissions of all the drop curbs with not enough thought around it, basically. I think that's really all I need to say, unless there is any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Simmons. And we also have in attendance Councillor Price, who is Mr. Simmons' ward councillor, who has asked for permission to address the committee.
Okay, thank you, Chair, and thank you for giving me permission to speak in your inaugural meeting as Chair of this committee. The lead petitioner has started off by describing the topography pretty well. So Pier Road, even those of you who don't actually live in Gillingham will know Pier Road is the main road which thunders through down past the Strand, going up to Yokosaka and Ito Way. It used to be a very quiet road before we had the dual carriageway come in, but even throughout that time, for many years, we are talking about council flats. So really the local authority has a duty, first of all, as landlord to the tenants that actually live there. That secondary part of their functions is highways, you know, and obviously permission for drop curbs, etc., and all of that. So, you know, basically, the residents at the Pier Road council flats have been able to access and egress through Barron Close, which is their only way in, basically, in terms of using a vehicle anyway. Over the last few months, they've been faced with one after another of permissions for drop curbs to be put in, which is effectively taken out probably about half the parking that used to be there.
Yeah, I would say it's at least half, yes.
Yeah, that's right. And, you know, obviously, it is, no one has a right to park outside their house, but if you can understand the actual topography, which so you've got a green bank going like that at the front, so there's no way you could get a car there. And obviously there are some disabled people, you know, that live there as well. So obviously what I'd like your committee to consider is there has been some correspondence about there are some garages in Barron Close, backing onto Pier Road, and if you're so minded, Chair, I would like there to be a proper stock take of, you know, just how many of those garages are being used, what is the size of the garages, because we all know that cars have increased in size, and what is the usage. And, you know, that way, if you could keep in touch with me as the ward councillor and with Gary Simmons, we could get to the bottom of the issue, which is whether there is going to be any scope to perhaps reduce the number of garages, thus allowing more parking space, and obviously still allowing for the residents in Barron Close that have got the drop curbs to be able to get in and out of their property. I mean, obviously the clue to this problem is close. So the name of the street is Barron Close, and obviously you can visualise, even if you've not been there before, Close is actually quite a tiny kind of thoroughfare. So anything that changes there is going to have a huge impact in terms of people being able to get in and out. Yes, I think, are there any other points that we haven't covered, Gary? Yes, I think there's one thing just to say. On the supplementary agenda, there is photo 3, which says that, you know, that you can see the rear access to Pier Road on the right. It's actually on the left. So where you see in those photographs in the supplementary agenda, the actual houses, that's Barron Close on the right-hand side. And on the left-hand side, you can see the gates which lead into the like back of the council flats. So just to make sure.
I did actually make
Yeah.
a mistake.
That's okay.
It should have read left.
Yeah,
basically,
yeah,
yes.
okay. Fair enough.
That's my fault.
Okay.
Okay, thank you,
Thank you.
Mr Simmons and Councillor Price. We also have in attendance tonight Jane Webb, who is Parking Business Manager. So she'll be able to answer some questions, which I imagine there shall be some. I know that Councillor Peake has indicated, so we'll kick off with Councillor Peake. You indicated. We'll start with Councillor Peake and then any other member.
Is that right? Yes. Thank you very much for coming this evening. It was really, really useful to see those photographs, the visual impact of that. So, you know, well done for that. Because as soon as you look at those photographs, it's quite striking, isn't it, the number of garages there. I know from previous experience they're quite often garages which back in the day was meant for vehicles, so often aren't. So I was just wondering if we could actually look closer into this. Could we have? I'm actually making a proposal now. I don't know about timing, whether I should do this now, because I'd like to make a proposal that we could have a...
So we'll take questions and then we'll
questions,
come to a
okay.
proposal at the end, but we'll take the temperature of the room first.
Oh, okay, so shall I, if you make the proposal at the end then, can I? Yeah. All right, thank you.
Any other member?
Thank you, Chair. I presume these garages are under the auspices of the HRA. My apologies, Housing Revenue Account. Yeah. So, perhaps we could refer it to housing colleagues to have another look at. I know in the agenda it says that they had a brief look, but perhaps the thought occurs to me that if each block is used, there could be a shuffle round, and one block could perhaps be removed. But it's often the case, as Adam mentioned, that modern cars can't fit in these old garages, so often they're just used for storage or whatever. So perhaps housing colleagues could have a look.
Thank you. Councillor Filmer.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I'll be quite happy if we do a feasibility on this, because what concerns me is when you see that blue badge holders can't find a space. So I'm sure what Councillor Gelvin said regarding the housing guys, there might be a possibility. Without knowing the area that well, there's normally a way you can fit in a few extra parking spaces, but I'd be quite happy to go along with that.
Councillor Hamilton.
Yeah, I just wanted to also raise similar issues. I'm quite concerned that we have got residents who may have access issues, and I'd be very keen to ensure that anyone who's a blue badge holder is able to have sufficient parking within the close. So yes, I would definitely like further investigation in that, and definitely the something in place to address the blue badge situation.
Councillor Peake.
Anyway, I'm glad about thank you, the rescues always. I'm glad to hear that there's obviously a vibe in the room about this going back, about usage. I was going to say, from previous experience, I know how often not only are garages not used for vehicles, quite often garages can be leased by somebody else who doesn't even live in the area. And if you're the person living in the area, that must be really annoying, really aggravating. So I'm glad to hear that. Having mentioned the word lease, it'd be nice to get a report also on what the lease situation is, the length of the lease and so on. Obviously, it's not time for proposals. I'm just putting it out there. And before we forget, our guest speaker mentioned about disabled access as well. And I think we could be in danger of that one passing us by. So can that be looked into, please?
Any other member?
No, so if we just
Okay.
ask Jane.
Jane, can you?
Thank you. So in regards to the parking element of the dropped curbs, from what we can see, in 2012 there was 2 drop curbs put into Barron Close, and to date there are 4 in total. So how this has reduced the curb space, but what it has done is it's actually given a greater parking availability, because... Okay, let me just finish. Because the residents that have given up their front gardens to allow parking are allowing, on 3 of the drop curbs, they're allowing 3 vehicles in front of their house to park in their, what was their garden, and they can park a vehicle in front of that as well to block them in if they live at that address. And the other drop curb, they can fit 2 vehicles on. So where, if there was no drop curbs, we could only put a vehicle behind a vehicle behind a vehicle. Where they've put in drop curbs, there's vehicles parking on the property, which is, it does allow more actual parking.
Yes, they can park in, but we cannot park in front of their drop curb. So in fact, you're minimalising the amount of parking we can do.
But they would still need to park.
Curbs now, we cannot park in front of them. So we're all coming up, it's just making the position impossible.
Okay.
We're not giving
Thank-
more parking spaces with drop curbs, you're in actual fact making less.
Thank you. If any member would like to pick up the points, I thank you for coming to the meeting tonight. But you'll understand that for the orderly running of the meeting, we do need to stick to the people who have indicated to speak in advance. But perhaps Councillor Hamilton wants to pick up that point.
Yeah, I'm just interested. You said that there were 4 drop curbs. How many properties are there actually in the close?
I haven't got the actual figure of properties in that road. It's just there's 4 dropped curbs on the properties.
Okay, perhaps Dee can give us the HRA perspective.
I've just got some information. So the garages appear to be in a decent condition, and we know that 12 of the 15 are currently being let. I don't have any details about what the use is, so we would have to look at that in a little bit more detail to ascertain that for you. We are planning to undertake a review of all garages in the future to ascertain their usage, condition and ongoing purpose, so we can include these in that overall review. I think we would definitely be happy to look at the accessibility issues.
Follow up on what Dee just said, really. I just had a look on Google Street View, and it looks like the properties with the drop curbs are as you go into Barron Close on the left-hand side. Now, could we not look at some sort of parking... I don't know the area very well, but could we not look at some sort of parking regulation where there was perhaps double yellow lines on the same side that the drop curbs were, that would allow vehicles to park opposite, because it looks like they could park opposite and would free up more spaces? I don't know, maybe that's an option to look at, but the garages look in good condition, so I assume they're, as Dee said, they're being used and they wouldn't want to be given up. I don't know, perhaps we need to look at some sort of other traffic measure, on that road there, which will help.
Councillor Peake.
Went green first go. Can I just clarify, did we only have one person from the group at the back? That,
Yeah.
because there was somebody who put their hand up, but they
Sure,
can't speak.
and
Okay.
we accept that people have views, and we're happy to accommodate where possible. But yeah, members can certainly reflect those views that they've heard as well.
I want to follow on from what Councillor Fern just said, because I was thinking the same. It seems clear to me that we actually do need to look at this much more closer, in hopefully consultation with the people that have come along today, get what they are saying, and look at the whole thing, not just the cars, garages, but the whole thing about access, egress, traffic measures, the whole lot. If we could have a more detailed report, and then we can be informed action and we can make a good decision.
Councillor Hamilton.
Yeah, and just to follow up that, I would propose that we have a feasibility study on this.
Thank you.
That specifically looks at access requirements for those with blue badges in particular.
Councillor Filmer.
Yeah, quite happy to go along with a feasibility study on it.
Yep, and then just an observation about any sort of audit of the garages. I think it'd be useful to know if any are being used for cars by people on the close as well, so that we're clear about any onward impact of disgorging those cars from the garage. That's obviously a significant factor. Over to you, Richard.
Thank you very much, Chair, and thank you very much to the lead petitioner for coming along and the ward member as well. Clearly, David, as Vice Chairman, will put a proposition to the committee and then the committee will vote on that. But if I could, hopefully, helpfully, summarise what I see as the mood of the room. So the views of the lead petitioner and indeed the other residents that have come along has been clearly heard by the committee. I think it is the mood of members that we would undertake a feasibility study here to see what could be done, both addressing issues around accessibility, as Councillor Hamilton has suggested, but also just picking up the HRA garages, as you've said, Chair, and as a number of other members have indicated as well. So we will undertake that feasibility work, would be my suggestion. Obviously, the Vice Chair will move that for the committee to agree. Would also suggest that my team would do that in Chair, as you suggest. That's why we do it through a lead petitioner as well. So, David, hopefully that's helpful in terms of framing a proposition for the committee. Committee will then vote on proceedings. Thank you, Chair.
Vice Chair, are you ready to go?
Excellent. So, three points there. The committee is requested to note the petition responses and appropriate officer action in paragraph 3 of the reports. Secondly, the committee is requested to consider the petition referral request in paragraph 4 and the directive of place and deputy chief executive's response. And thirdly, the committee requests for further feasibility work to review the accessibility for residents on Barron Close and Pier Road, including reviewing the use of garages, working alongside the ward councillor and the petitioners.
Is that seconded?
Let's second it.
Thank you. Is it agreed?
Agreed.
Thank you.
So you can thank them.
Yeah. Thanks very much for your attendance tonight. I know that as someone who has attended these committees long before I was a councillor, as a member of the public, they can be incredibly frustrating, particularly watching what looks like quite stuffy procedure. But as Richard has explained, it's so that we can make sure that everyone's view is properly recorded. This is on camera, and I think hopefully what you've heard tonight, you understand how seriously we take items like this, and thank you very much for your attendance. Thank you. Thank you. Okay. Thank you, committee. We'll move on to agenda item 6, which is Council Plan Performance Monitoring Report and Risk Summary, Quarter 4, 2022-23, and that is on pages 29 to 82 of the agenda. Sam Beck-Farley, Chief Organisational Culture Officer, will introduce this item.
Thank you, Chair. The report summaриses Quarter 4 performance measures, of which there are 9 that fall under the remit of this committee. These are presented in appendices 1 and 2. 3 measures fall under place priority and 6 measures fall under the growth priority. We're reporting on 8 measures this quarter. 1 measure, growth value added per job, is data only. 75%, so 6 out of the 8 council plan measures we're reporting on, have either met or exceeded target. Whilst there are 2 council plan measures that have not met target, EDC 20, percentage of square footage let in council-owned business units, is only slightly under. The report also presents the Quarter 4 review of the strategic risks at Appendix 3. There were no changes to the strategic risks or the current scores for this quarter. The Quarter 4 council plan and risk was discussed at Cabinet this week, and members are asked to consider the Quarter 4 performance and the strategic risk summary. Thank you.
Thank you, Sam. Any member? Councillor Filmer.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I'm always interested in looking at these charts to see how we're doing on the council, and I'm always pleased to see frontline services in the green. And all these things here, at the moment are doing very well, and may it continue for a long time. So these charts are very, very useful to keep an eye on where we are actually performing and where we're not performing. I mean, you always get things like the red one for we're not building enough houses, but to be honest, councils don't build houses, developers do, and that's why we can't force them to build as many. But getting back to frontline services, the satisfaction figures are above target, so from my point of view, I'm very happy.
Councillor Hamilton.
Yeah, so just on the figures, and that it's at green, it's a very low set of people. So it's not really giving a clear picture of whether people are satisfied or not. It's 117 users out of a massive population across the whole of Medway. So how can we be clear that this is a robust analysis, given the very small data set that you're using?
Sam, can you offer some explanation of the methodology?
This has been raised before around the citizens user group and the membership. In terms of us trying to seek feedback, we will try and seek feedback from more people, but we also have other measures that we look at, so it's not just based on this particular measure, but that is one we're reporting within the council plan. I'm sure Richard will be able to let you know kind of some of the other stuff that we've got going on across the service area, but this is one very small area that we report on, but there is other measures that we also take into consideration.
Yeah, Councillor Hamilton.
So if there are other measures that are taken into consideration, can they be transparent in the reports moving forward, please?
Any other member? Councillor Hubbard.
Thank you. Councillor Filmer wouldn't have heard me say this before, and maybe other members won't have as well, is that I'm looking at the improved street environmental cleanliness, litter.
Can I just ask you to, if you can direct us to a page number in the agenda, would be helpful, I think, for other members.
Page 34.
Hmm? Page 34. There you go. It's in green. And I can take you a short distance from my house and you'll see streets that always littered. Doesn't matter being viewed from a distance or not, they are littered. And it's because they are terraced, cars, and somehow we expected that our residents live in streets that are littered. I've just inherited a couple of roads into my now expanded ward, and Roach Street and Charles Street, especially Roach Street, beats the whole lot. It is, I can guarantee you, every day it'll be littered, because the wind blown litter through the area. So to give it a green, it's a nonsense. In fact, a lot of these targets in this plan are nonsenses. And I'm glad to say that we're going to be reviewing the whole plan, and something's going to come forward with a whole set of targets or objectives, whether they're met or not, are sensible. So we've got, within the existing plan, a whole lot of nonsenses. And that is the one that always gets me, is that go to a short distance from where I live and it's littered. I can't say any more, Chair, because the old former Chair was actually a constituent of mine. I would say in leafy suburbs of my ward, like where you lived, Councillor Etheridge, it's never littered. But, you know, you have to go the same distance the other way and you've got littered areas. It is not right, and I will bang on about it over and over again, and especially when Medway North comes along, they recognise it's a problem. You know, we need to address the actual plan itself.
Yeah, I think we can come to, perhaps Ruth will be able to give us some perspective. I mean, this is something that has come up many times before at this committee, I can say. There are aspects such as the very selective number of streets that are sort of, in a sense, people know when where's going to be marked because they know which streets are the ones that are checked. So I suppose that might give rise to some suspicion that those streets will be fine, but other ones can fend for themselves. What's the situation?
Okay, thank you, Chair. And thank you, Councillor Hubbard. We've certainly, we have discussed this at several committees previously. So I'm probably going to be saying the same thing to you first of all. So we have a process for monitoring the cleanliness of our streets. And it is a set process that is followed. More than happy to run through that with you outside of the committee. But basically, it's what they see on that day, and it is a snapshot in time. And some streets, I'm afraid, some areas are worse than others, and that can be because of the footfall in that area. That can be that it's near a school. It can be that you know, there is just a problem in terms of a particular road. As always, Councillor Hubbard, if you want to report particular areas, I'm more than happy that we will go and look at those areas. If there are particular days that you're seeing issues in particular areas, please let me know, because if there's a pattern there, then we will look into it. It isn't, what I would say, Chair, is it isn't necessarily the same roads on the same days when we do the inspections, and it isn't the same people either. So I wouldn't say that it's something where, you know, we know a road's going to be clean, so we go down there and we check on the litter situation. And it's not a case of, you know, a road may have one crisp packet on it, that kind of thing. Leaves as well, unfortunately, can look, you know, can keep up the litter. If people aren't keeping their front gardens tidy, then that can catch hold of litter as well. So it's an ongoing issue. I'm not saying it's perfect. No area is perfect, I would say. But I'm more than happy to look at these specific areas that Councillor Hubbard wants to raise, and we will meet you there. We can go through it. Very happy to show you what methodology is used as well, which is the same methodology that's used throughout the UK, in actual fact. It's not something specific to Medway.
So I recognise...
Sorry, can I
yeah,
be
okay.
very terribly helpful? Yes. The Assistant Director has made that off before, and I've actually taken it up. So the day after the first day of the new year, I met up with Ian Gilmore, and we walked a particular area of my ward, and we talked about all areas of my ward that had similar issues. So thank you. I thanked Ian for that, and I will undoubtedly remind him of our conversation. And I did a marked up map and gave it to him. It doesn't get around the problem that this is still misleading. Yeah.
Thank you. I just wonder whether, you know, before we get bogged down into individual streets, because we can all think of those streets in our own wards, is there scope? I take your point that there's a sort of randomisation element in the sense that you're not going to these streets at the same time on the same day necessarily. But is there a way of randomising the streets that are chosen? Is there a way of increasing the pool of streets? Would you be prepared to accept suggestions of those problem areas and that it becomes less easy to perhaps predict where those inspections might take place? But just one other thing, because I think that in terms of, you know, what days of the week these things happen on. I certainly notice that in the day leading up to bin collections, you notice a lot of bags being put out too early, and that can cause littering. And then if those bags have been attacked on the night before, it can actually take until a day or two after the bin collection. So actually you can end up with only 2 or 3 days of the week which are relatively litter-free in some areas because of that consequence.
Yes, I mean, undeniably, you know, we are reliant on the general public following the rules, not putting their bags out until the day of the collection, 7 o'clock in the morning. Not everybody follows the rules, unfortunately. We do an awful lot of education and engagement through the waste service to try and explain to people. And, you know, the methods of collection that we have in place in Medway is the fact that we are putting out bins. We are, as you know, with the dry recycling, if people are using the blue and the white bags, things can blow out of them, that kind of thing. But in answer to your earlier point, Chair, absolutely. If you know, we're more than happy to look at making it harder on ourselves, I guess, is the best way, so that we can give more of an assurance to members that you know, that this is a kind of a transparent process. More than happy to do that, and I'll take that away and look at that.
Richard?
Thank you, Chair. And just to pick up Councillor Hamilton's point earlier on as well, and the mood of the conversation here too, of course, there's a new administration. So in terms of the performance plan, as a corporate management team, we had undertaken a light touch refresh of the performance plan, and that was agreed by Cabinet previously, before the new administration. Of course, as the new administration, if you're wanting to reframe the council plan and identify different priorities, then of course that is open to the administration to do, and the officer team will work alongside members across the council to seek to deliver that as well. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Cook.
And you've got
Thank you, Chair. I think exactly as has just been pointed out, you know, a lot of us are very new, and there's a huge body of evidence and work that goes into this. And I think we'd all say that these are exactly the issues which our residents are concerned about, and the things we really want to understand and probe in order to serve them better. And there's a huge amount of information. And firstly, thank you to officers. You can see the amount of work that's gone into making these things happen, but to putting the reports together for us. And I think understanding that context, and as is in the introduction about where this has come from, is really helpful. One suggestion, whether it will be possible to collate the individual kind of project indicator codes and their relevant outcomes into one-page summary, so that rather than just having that initial kind of summary amount, we could have those individual codes together, because there are greens and ambers. And, you know, I almost want to take this report line by line, and certainly project indicator by project indicator. And at the moment, I'm having to do that by scrolling through a lot of pages. If I could have a summary page, then I can say, and then we can perhaps talk specifically, because there are questions I want to ask about fly tipping, there are questions I want to ask about many of the other things. And I'm aware that it's making me kind of go all over the place. So perhaps a suggestion to the report there.
Yeah, I think that's also an issue of the fact that we've now moved to paperless agendas, because it was a lot easier to furiously flick through a paper agenda, I would argue, than it is now. But I'm sure the trees will thank us for that. Did I see Councillor Sands indicate?
Thank you, Chair. I've got two quick questions. The first question is page 49, which is the district enforcement and the issues of fixed penalty notices. In quarter 2 of 22-23, I noticed there was over 1,000 fixed penalty notices for littering, but none for dog fouling. I can't speak for the rest of my colleagues here, but my email box is full of people moaning about dog fouling. Is it a case that our litter wardens or our enforcement officers are only looking at high streets and major streets and not getting out into the rest of the community?
Ruth?
Thank you, Councillor Sands. In the majority of cases, our litter wardens are in the most populated areas, I have to say. If we concentrate, though, on dog fouling, the legislation around being able to serve a notice on an owner of a dog is actually quite complicated. It has to be seen in the act of fouling to be able to then serve the notice on the owner. So it's quite a difficult one, I have to say, for the district litter enforcement to be able to do, which is why the numbers are quite low, I'm afraid. And it's obviously we can only work by the legislation. Obviously, if they do see a dog in the act and it's not on its own, it's with an owner, then they certainly will serve a notice on them, and they're quite keen to try and catch them, but it's a hard thing to do, I have to say. I'm sorry if that sounds like an excuse, it's not, but that is the case.
Councillor Galvin?
Thank you, Chair. Going back to the litter issue and fly tipping and the like, yes, what we've got presented to us this evening is just a snapshot. And it reflects generally what's happening, but as Councillor Hubbard has said, there will always be areas in our individual wards that have problems. But what I would say is also incumbent upon us as members to play our role. If you email frontline services or use the member helpline, I've found that over the years I've been on the council, the response to that has usually been pretty good. We also have, you will find residents who will regularly help you out. Certainly my colleague here, Councillor Brake, and I have residents in Walderslade who are only too pleased to point out the errors of the council's ways when things are not done to their satisfaction, and we can pass that on. But I can assure you that if you email FLS, use the members helpline, and I've found over the years the response has been pretty good. But there are some areas, unfortunately, where you do get perhaps a group of residents who are not playing the game, as Ruth Deleu has said, not putting their stuff out 2 or 3 days early. Sometimes they do, not playing the game. But generally, I think, yes, we've got to play our role as well. Yeah, we're here to scrutinise, but also we have another role. We are the sort of the guardians, if you like, the champions of our own individual wards, and we have got the means to do it. And I think if we all work together, we can make Medway a better place.
Councillor Peake, did I see you indicate?
Thank you. I'm actually just in one back to say, because what other people said. Before I ask the first question I want to ask, and I apologise if I've missed it, the difference between short trend and long trend is actually, can I have an idea of what the word short means and the word long? What is short? The second thing is, as already been described, they need to have a much better idea of how this information is collected. If I understood correctly, you said it is a snapshot rather than something that is scientifically or systematically done. So I would, for me, even though this gives us a broad idea, it doesn't actually have a lot of value. Now, I'm coming from a place where 4 years ago, I actually stood in Rainham South. And of course, there, when talking to residents, no potholes, no litter, no noise, no traffic. Now in Wayford and Weeswood, as my colleague Councillor Cook said, these are issues there all the time. I appreciate that we have a role to fill, but that seems kind of like after the event. So if we could actually analyse exactly where this information came from, because as soon as I saw this figure, I'm afraid I was sceptical straight away, because not, if you like, in my world, did I recognise this? I'm also looking for some information about rota. Now, before I go any further, I would like to put it on record, the bin men that collect in my particular road do a fantastic job. But a few months ago, on the way to work, I actually got stuck, that dreaded thing where you're behind a dump truck and you can't do anything about it. And I was truly shocked about the amount of mess being left behind. Bins not being put accurately into the back, so therefore bouncing off literally and rubbish going all over the floor. This was an area that it could be deemed to be deprived. I'm not saying there's any connection there, I'm just making that observation. All the more reason to have a much better idea about where this level of rubbish and this tipping is going. On the idea of a rota, it'd be very useful to actually know how the rota works. I don't know how possible it is, not only about when the bin collections are in the areas that we represent. Canvassing some time ago, somebody said to me, a resident said to me, that my road, fantastic for about an afternoon and evening, because the sweeper, those truck things that come round with the big mops, do a fantastic job. And then the dump truck came around the next day. So within 24 hours, it's gone from really nice to a total mess again. I don't know how feasible it is, but wouldn't it be great if it could be the other way round? So if we could just have more information, please. Thank you.
Ruth?
Yes, certainly, Councillor Peake. Okay, so I'll talk to you first about the process for, we call it National Indicator 195, which is why I say it is prescribed. And what it is I have a group of officers who work for me, and they are trained, and they will be able to go out on the roads that they've been given, and they will do the check based on their training as to how clean that road is or not, and then they will scale it between, I think it's A, B, C, D. I've actually been trained on it myself, but a long time ago. And they will make a decision on that basis and then record it, and then it's all analysed, and that's where we come with this statistic. More than happy if at any point you'd like us to run through that with you. We're very happy to do that. Quite highly trained people, I would say. And as I said to Councillor Hubbard, I know we've spoken about this for a while, haven't we? It is just, when I say a snapshot, it's that day. Yeah. So it's at that point that they do this. So I'm not saying they will go back 3 or 4 times a day. I'm not saying they'll go back every day of that week. They will go out, do their work, do their assessment, and bring it back. And that's how the process works. In terms of your other questions, mess left behind, it is a problem. That's a problem with waste in general, where they're collecting it. They try as hard as they possibly can not to leave waste behind. If you can imagine 182 properties, 1,000 properties a week. So they are moving quite fast. You'll see them moving fast. And thank you so much for your kind words about the waste service and the collections, because that is, you know, it's a hard service, but one that we're very proud of and that we do well on. What I will look at is your point around the sequencing with the sweeper vehicles going behind. We do try and do that. Sometimes it works out a slightly different way. If somebody's, you know, if we've got a particularly dirty road, then it might be the day before they'll go through. But in general, the sequencing is that we will cleanse a road after the waste collection. Maybe not directly after, I would say. And also our refuse collectors, they will try and pick up spills if it's something that they can possibly pick up. They have got what are them things called? Thank you. Yeah, brooms and things. So they do try and do that as much as they can. However, they are on quite a tight schedule as well to get round to all of the route for that day. Yes, I think that's it, isn't it? I've covered everything.
Want to come back briefly, Councillor Peake?
So you basically actually just answered at the end. They are on a time in motion, presumably, because when I was stuck behind this truck, the speed they were working, I think, was part of the problem. They were not taking the time to be careful. I did ask about the difference between short and long. And I'm going to embarrass somebody now, because there's a Councillor Curry in this room who I know on a personal level has championed getting rid of fly tipping and litter on several occasions. So give credit where it's due. Anything to make him embarrassed.
Yes, so as I said, 118,000 properties a week, and that's the collection of dry recycling, the collection of the green bins, the organic bins, and also the collection of the residual waste as well. So they're on a very tight schedule, you can imagine, can't you? So exactly, it's a very hard job. The lorries that go round, they know exactly where they've got to go, what time they've got to start, and remember they also have to tip, so they have to go and tip off their waste as well. So it is, you know, it's one of those quite amazing things if you actually watch it, if you could watch it from the sky and you could see them going round, and that's why it's quite a hard service to run, because you only have to have one crew go down, a vehicle go down, and then, you know, you're reliant on that crew, another crew going out again later in the day, so that we keep the service running. And I'm hoping as residents you all know that very rarely does that service go wrong. I've got all my fingers crossed here.
Sam, can you expand on short and long for us?
Yes, of course, Chair, thank you. So short-term trend is the previous quarter as a comparison, and long-term trend is that of the previous 4 quarters. Sorry, short-term trend is that of the previous quarter, and long-term is the previous 4 quarters. Thank you.
That's really helpful. Councillor Hine.
Well, thank you very much, Chair, and may I first of all congratulate you on your appointment as Chairman of this committee, the best committee on the Council. And I look forward to working with you and all colleagues to collaboratively scrutinise the work of the executive and ultimately make Medway a better place for all of our residents. There's just a few points I wanted to make on the report this evening. First and foremost, I think it's a record of the success of the previous administration, and it's great to see our progress and that we are on track to deliver the priorities set out by the previous administration. Just on page 34 of the report, the results from the Citizens Panel. It was very encouraging to read the satisfaction that residents have with the refuse collection services, and I'd like to echo what other members have said about the quality of the services that we get from our refuse collection teams. And I'd like just some more information around the Citizens Panel. I've never actually heard of them before, and it'd be interesting to have that data broken down by wards, if possible. How many respondents have come back to you per ward, perhaps? It would be good to have that information. Secondly, page 37, delivery of the SEMS as part of HIF. Of course, we've had the news this week about the potential withdrawal of funding from the HIF project. The SEMS have already had their planning applications approved, I believe, and it would just be good to have an update as to where we are with that, really, and how the latest development might potentially affect those projects. And lastly, I just want to mention page 48, prosecutions and sanctions. It's encouraging to see that in the last financial year, the number of fixed penalty notices issued has reduced significantly compared to previous years. And I think it shows the previous Conservative administration's commitment to reduce fly tipping and other environmental offences, and how serious we have taken matters like that in the past. And I can only hope that for the sake of our residents, this good progress will continue with the new administration. And lastly, very lastly, thank you for allowing me to speak, but I know myself and Councillor Lamas would want to put on record our thanks to Medway North and all of the frontline services team for everything they do in my ward, in particular, Princes Park, which is the best ward in Medway, making it the perfect place to live. We're very grateful to you, Ruth, and your team for everything you do. Thank you.
Richard.
Thank you very much, Chair. Thank you, Alex, for those comments as well to the team. Thank you for that. So there were two kind of questions within there, if I just pick that up. So one was around Citizens Panel. Over the years, members of this committee have asked similar questions around what is the composition of the Citizens Panel. It's a standing group of individual residents across Medway, so I forget the exact number now, but it's a couple of hundred people, slightly more than that actually. And we use them as a grouping where we put particular issues to them and then we get the responses back. So Councillor Hamilton's earlier question around that kind of smaller number that we have, that was a kind of subset of the responses that we've had back from the Citizens Panel. Well established as a kind of methodology for seeking views from resident populations. And the issue is over time around kind of refreshing the makeup of the Citizens Panel. But they are a kind of standing panel of residents of Medway that we can put issues to, and then they give us feedback on those particular issues. And I think the offer that Sam was going to make was happy to do something. We can either send a briefing note round to members if that would be helpful. That's certainly a mechanism that we use at this committee, where it'd be helpful to get the kind of background information. And then if members have further questions, then that can be raised with officers either outside of the committee or if members want to bring something back to the committee itself. That was the first question. The second question was around SEMS. So this is about green spaces, part of our HIF proposals. So as members will be aware, yes, there has been news around the HIF scheme that was widely trailed at Cabinet earlier on this week. I think it's important to say right at the outset, no final decision has been taken yet about the HIF scheme. So as you heard and will have seen the debate at Cabinet, we are straining every sinew to make representations to Homes England and to the Department of Levelling Up Homes and Community to seek to ensure their support for our HIF scheme continues. And given this is all occurring in real time at the moment, that effort is ongoing. It's ongoing on a daily basis. This is kind of hour by hour at the moment. So that's the current position around HIF as well, Chair. So hopefully that's addressed both of Alex's questions. Thank you.
Thanks, that's helpful. Councillor Hubbard.
Thank you. Oh dear. Thank you. Yes, frontline services, Medway North, great. They always respond very quickly to any email I send them, and literally is picked up and collected, fly tipping is collected, etc. But it's not the issue here. It's the fact that it's got a green, and it's about the plan not being good enough to actually reflect what I would like to see happening. Obviously, the report is about the last quarter of last year, essentially, so it's the fourth quarter of 22-23. So it's always in the past. And therefore, if you look at page 37, 38, page 74, they refer to HIF, of course. And I'll be interested to see how they are reflected in the next quarter, the one that we're currently in, to actually see what the impact is of what has happened in the last, well, it's not just this week, of course, it's happened some time before. In fact, happened in the quarter probably we were looking at here, when issues are starting to change regarding Homes England. So I'll just really emphasise, I would like to see something that's quite honest about in the next quarter about HIF, because it's going to change, that's for sure.
Thank you. Councillor Brake.
Thank you very much. The reports and the information that that's been presented this evening, in fact, is as always very useful. It's nice to see exactly what's going on across Medway, and each and every one of us as ward councillors, we can all think of things that go on in our own ward, and recognise that we as ward councillors actually respond to the demands of our residents, and that is the way that it should be. I say it's the way it should be because that's obviously our role, part of our role as councillors. But one of the things that has always concerned me has been the fact that you know, here we are in June now, and we were told no mow May this year, but no mow May did come into effect. And we know that because our residents have been contacting us as ward councillors and saying, what's happened with the grass cutting? When is somebody going to do something about it? And the standard response that's been given, in fact, is that, well, this is down to Norse because they're all behind time. But when a resident phones up and says, come and have a look at this big, large expanse of green that I have in front of my house and see what a mess it is, and you go and visit together with the resident who actually says, and I'm quoting here, do you know, if I went to my local barber and I had a haircut in the same way that the grass has been cut here, he said, they would not get any money out of me, not a penny. And the truth is, I had to agree with him. And really the point I'm coming to is that the information that we have here has been prepared by officers. This is officers, Medway Council officers, auditing what has been going on across Medway and happening in our wards individually, and all of us are in the same boat. What I'd be interested to know and to see is what's the result of audits actually being carried out by Medway North. They must be aware of the rubbish bins that and the mess that's being left after they've gone through, and I really do, the issue raised about the quality
of our waste collection. It's the best in the country, it really is. Time and time again, I'm told by our local residents how good the service is, how helpful they are to people who might perhaps have a disability, how these people actually go out of their way to make sure that they do a good job. But that's happening on the ground. But what I'd really like to know is that what are Medway North? They're the ones with the contract. They're the ones that we are paying to do a job. What are their audit figures like? Do we compare them? Do we go back to them and say, well, they may be your audit figures, but this is what we've got. What are we doing to work with Medway North? So instead of being reactive, which is what this is all about now, and all the things we're discussing, is being reactive to issues that have been raised. What is being done to make sure that we haven't got to be reactive, that the job is being done properly in the first place? Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. I think Councillor Brake raises a good point, and one that, if you'll indulge me, I'll expand on briefly, which is around that sort of reactive approach, because one of the things that's a sort of novel approach is the QR codes on litter bins. And I made some inquiries about that to the environmental enforcement team, because it struck me as useful information that can be used if you are properly auditing. When those bins are scanned, you will find which ones are problematic. I was told that that was a process that was happening, and that there would be you know, some sort of report. So if you can maybe, if you know anything about when we might see the fruits of that labour.
Yes, sure. That is proving a very good initiative, actually, to and one that's been very popular with the public in terms of using the QR codes. The information is being gathered, and if memory serves me correctly, when the member who was a portfolio, whose name I cannot remember, was held to account recently, the response was that we were going to give it 12 months and then look back and see how well the system was working. We know the system is working well and it is giving us data already, but we want to do a full review of that to make sure that it is something that is useful, and obviously then we will be able to look at how useful that is in terms of the planning with Medway North as well. Oh, I meant Gary. Yeah. Gary Hackwell, thank you, Councillor Hackwell. In terms of, Councillor, what you were saying around how Medway North is monitored, we have a liaison board that meets quarterly with Medway North, and that's made up of officers and also members, and we have an opportunity there where Medway North will report on their progress and their performance, and it's an opportunity really for that to be scrutinised and also for issues to be brought up at that time for a frank discussion around what is happening. Also, as officers, there is a whole lot of one-to-one conversations and team conversations that go on the whole time in terms of managing the outputs that we are getting and expect to get out of Medway North. Yeah.
Thank you. Councillor Filmer.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I was just going to... Councillor Hubbard was on about the road he lives. Have you looked at the frequency? Because we've had problem roads before, and Ruth and Frontline Services and Waste, we've changed the frequencies of the cleaning regimes, and that might be a way forward with if members have got roads they're having problems with.
Councillor Hamilton.
Yeah, I've just got a couple of questions in terms of the document. On page 37, the programme of S106, could you elaborate on the delay in receiving the first S106 payment? That's the first one. And also the time frame for the further consultation. On page 39, I really welcome the Medway Safe Spaces scheme, and it's great that so many businesses have signed up. I am concerned, however, that those businesses only operate during the daytime economy and not the early evening and night economy. What efforts are going to be made to ensure that we can encourage businesses to sign up at those times of the day or evening? In terms of the idling project, could you clarify why Raynham, which is a low density in terms of population area was chosen rather than a higher population density area? How are the learnings from that project going to inform further work around idling? And is there scope to roll this out to other areas in Medway? On page 49, thank you, Councillor Sands. That was something I wanted to ask, so thank you for that. And on page 56, 200 jobs created seems a rather low, not a very ambitious target in my book annually. And also, I'm very concerned about what lies underneath that. So are these quality full-time jobs? Are these temporary couple of months jobs? Is there sustainability that sits beneath this? And are we actually looking at jobs that are actually decent pay? So not rock bottom exploitative wages here. And I think I'll probably leave it at that because I've got a few more.
Richard, would you respond?
Thank you, Chair. So I'm going to direct where the responses are going to come from because Paula raised 4 different questions there. So section 106 would be D, just picking that up first of all. Then the safe spaces in the idling project will be Ruth, and then Sunny will pick up the question around jobs, if that's okay, Chair. So we'll do it in that order. Thank you.
Okay. D?
So I'm afraid I can't tell you what the delay is there. I don't know that right now, but I can... Sorry?
So we'll follow up after that.
Yeah, I can provide you with that information.
Ruth?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, Councillor Hamilton. Safe Spaces is a brilliant project, isn't it? It absolutely is. And it's something that we are looking to take forward with the, I call them the Medway Task Force, they're now called the Neighbourhood Task Force, because we are still working on some funding that we got that will feed into that. So you're absolutely right. We want to carry on and make that the evening economy as well. And businesses have been very receptive to it, actually. So that's really good. In terms of the idling project, if it would help, I can get you some information on that, which will give the rationale for why that area. It's a piece of work that we did with University and of Kent, University of Kent, and people much more clever than me decided that that was a good area to do for various reasons. So I'm very happy to supply you with some information on that if that will be helpful.
So just, is there any potential for that to be that project to be rolled out, or for the learnings to inform work moving forward?
Absolutely, yes. The learning from that will then feed into other projects that we'll be able to do around Medway.
Sonny?
So apologies, I was too busy discussing with Dee whether your first question was me or her. So unfortunately, I missed the first page. Very bad first impression. So apologies. Your question again?
Yeah, that's okay. Yeah, so the 200 jobs created seems an extremely low target. And also, there's no information about the quality of those jobs. So are we looking at full-time jobs? Are we looking at temporary short-term contracts? What sort of jobs does it actually mean? And are we looking at decent jobs being created with wages that people can actually live on, rather than rock bottom, minimum wage, absolutely difficult to live on?
I think the simplest answer to that is, unfortunately, I don't have the answer now, and I'll take it away. So I think in terms of the level of information that you want, I think that's probably something that we need to add in terms of the new way of looking at this. But apologies, I don't have that now, but I will come back to you. All right?
Thank you. Councillor Cook.
Thank you. I want to come back to that question of data, and I guess as we were just saying, you know, having what shows the true picture. And looking again at page 48 and you know, looking at those sanctions that we've already discussed today. And again, back to the conversations we've had about people reporting and about what we've seen ourselves. And obviously really aware that there's a difference between sanctions and reported incidents. And if I said I was going to come back to fly tipping. If I take fly tipping as an example, because it's something that really does, you know, worry the residents in Weeswood and in Wayfield particularly, I know that I have, and residents I've spoken to have reported incidents of fly tipping and potentially, you know, could be reaching that number just in our area. So is there any availability of data of reported incidents that have been cleared up, and then the comparison of that with then sanctions that are carried through, with fly tipping as an example, but recognising that could be applied in lots of different places? Thank you.
Ruth?
Yes, that's certainly something I can look into for you. We have really good reporting mechanisms in terms of fly tipping, so I'd be happy to take that away and try and get you that information.
Thank you. Councillor Sands.
Thank you, Chair. First of all, I'd just like to agree with Councillor Brake, because on the peninsula, the grass cutting this year has been absolutely atrocious. So I'll agree with Councillor Brake then. The risk rating that we got at the beginning of this agenda, we were told it hadn't changed. But surely the losing of a railway station, or the funding for a railway station, a third of the HIF, losing that would have changed the risk rating. And with the letter that's just been done at the Cabinet, how has that affected the risk rating now? And thirdly, the new growth for the WHO Development Fund, that grouping met quite often. Is there any way this committee can ask to see minutes from those meetings?
Richard?
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Ron, for your questions as well. So we need to bear in mind this is around Q4. Yeah, so this is Q4 reporting, so it's kind of historical reporting in that sense. So it was around March time that the decision around pausing rail was communicated. And of course, the more recent news that we have had from Homes England, of course, clearly postdates any of the reporting that we've had here. And I think it's been raised previously where members have said that they would be looking for open and transparent reporting into our next reporting period for Q1. Part of the referral from Business Support Overview and Scrutiny Committee that went to Cabinet earlier on this week was around asking those questions of governance. And if, Ron, if you heard the Cabinet debate, Cabinet agreed to look at the governance arrangements and indeed to look at the consultation arrangements around our HIF programme as well, notwithstanding the emerging picture around our HIF scheme. And Chair, if I can, just as HIF has been raised, I think it is important to recognise the significance of our HIF programme for Medway and the Peninsula. And in the context of the global challenges that we have seen in terms of the financials, that has caused this question to be asked by Homes England, who asked us to look at our HIF programme. It has been widely trailed in terms of that Cabinet debate, where, as I say, no decision has yet been taken on our HIF programme. And that is why we are straining every sinew to seek to agree with Homes England and the Department a more pragmatic approach than the one that is currently being mooted. So that is our position, Chair. It will be reported through our performance management approach into the next quarter when we receive that. But of course, this is rather historical data because it relates back to Q4. Hope that helps, Ron. Thank you, Chair.
Yep.
It seems to me, I think it's 10 years to this month that the council lost the Lodge Hill debate where they wanted to build a new town at Lodge Hill. I think it was the core strategy. And you would have thought that having a defeat like that, when you started talking about mass development on the peninsula again, that you would have got all your ducks in a row to start with. It doesn't seem to have worked that way. And did we learn anything from 10 years ago?
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Ron. Yes, there were lessons learnt at the time, both for ourselves and for Homes England as a developer themselves. So we're in discussion with Homes England as a funder currently, but of course Homes England is also a developer. So yes, lessons were learned from the Lodge Hill episode. And worth bearing in mind, of course, that our HIF scheme was actually submitted in 2017. So government scrutinised our proposals for 2 years before they announced that, yes, we were successful in 2019. It was November 2019. We then spent a further 6 months in discussion with government in terms of putting that contract in place. So government has spent quite a long time scrutinising our proposals for HIF and going through all of the details of our scheme. I think what is clear for members, and all members will be involved in this as the local plan comes forward, we have significant housing targets that government have set for us. We have a significant housing need within Medway too. We need to ensure that we get the right homes in the right places with the right infrastructure. And that is the task that actually officers and members across the council must take on very seriously and assiduously as we bring forward that local plan process. I've got to say through you, Chair, there are going to be times when people are not going to be happy about some of the decisions that will need to be taken, but this is about trying to do the right thing for the place of Medway for the next 20 years. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. I'm getting to the end of the list of those who have indicated. I've got Councillor Peake.
Almost, I want to change subject because I'm really pleased about how this conversation is going and about how HIF is being looked into. I'm going to change the subject. It's just to try and get some idea, try and get value out of what I'm reading on page 37 with the priority play programme and the allocation of 250,000 budget from the council's capital programme improvements. Can you just give me some kind of ballpark idea? It's supposed to be a pun there, sorry, of how much this amount of money is in comparison to the need that there is. I don't know if I put that right. So you've got a budget this amount of money. In your opinion, is this a good chunk of money or is this nowhere close to the amount of money that we need? Please.
Sonny?
If you're offering more, we will always take more, Councillor Peake. So I think if we can minute that, that would be fantastic. But in all seriousness, that was the absolute minimum that we could do to keep these playgrounds going. So absolutely, yeah, to keep things going, to keep them open, to keep them safe. So this is not a luxurious programme. This is something that we had to cut to cloth because obviously it's quite difficult. Obviously, in terms of when you have a new space, you often get Section 106 and other elements that you can provide them. The hardest job is always maintenance. So again, my team worked very hard to get the best value for money. So what I can tell you is that represents really good value. That keeps a lot of play areas open and engaging with the community. But we can always do more. So I wouldn't say it's a vast amount of money. I think it's a very clever use of the money that my team have pulled together there.
Well, thank you, because that to me gives it real value to hear that is the amount of money just to keep things going. So I've got some idea what we're up against. So thank you.
Councillor Field.
Hello. Thank you, Chair. Thank you all, and thank you for your support as a new member, particularly Frontline Services. You've been really excellent in responding to particularly street cleaning queries, so thank you for that. I just want to focus on the getting around Medway section. So, firstly...
Could you just direct us, can you direct us to the page?
So starting from page 68. So, we have a key performance indicator here. And the key performance indicator is average journey time along 5 routes across Medway. So I'm going to ask a very basic question to begin with and then ask a more strategic question alongside that. So average journey time, can you confirm what times you average around, what forms of transport you do that? And secondly, it says 5 routes across Medway, so what routes are they across Medway? And then the more strategic question that comes out of that actually is, how does that align with the local transport plan and the 5 main key points in that, which are around ensuring highway infrastructure is maintained, efficiently managing and improving Medway's local highway network, ensuring public transport becomes a realistic alternative, contributing to better health by encouraging walking and cycling, and ensure people that can move around Medway safely. That target seems a very specific, manageable target, and I'm not sure it necessarily encapsulates the whole of that spirit. And again, it's just a thing about, it looks green, but actually there's significant challenges around getting around Medway. So that's my first one, and then I'm going to bang on about buses later, which you'll get used to.
Richard?
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, David, for your question. So this is another indicator that members of the committee have habitually been interested in and wanting to understand that. I think it is fair to say we do have a number of indicators that might feel different from the felt experience when one is moving around Medway or when one is experiencing litter on streets. But the 5 routes that we have, and we can send around a briefing note if that would be helpful, so Vice Chairman, we need to capture this in there. So we can do a briefing note on the 5 routes and the kind of metrics that are used there. If I could just say, and just looping back to an earlier comment that I made, Chair, the new administration has the opportunity to refresh the council plan and indeed to work with officers around the establishment of some new indicators and ways of measuring those indicators as well. It was said at Cabinet earlier on this week that in particular that indicator could benefit from having a kind of wider active travel aspect brought to it. So it's not just about how quickly cars can get around the place. It's a much more of a kind of active travel approach. And that was mooted at Cabinet earlier on this week. So I think that's going to be very much in the administration, the executives kind of thinking about those indicators as we go forward. But the specific action, Vice Chair, will be around, we'll do a briefing note on the 5 routes, if that's okay, Chair.
Did you plan to bang on about buses now?
Oh, you're going to get used to me banging on about buses. Don't worry about that. So I'm just quickly finding the right page because it's in the climate change area. I will find that in a second whilst I'm doing that. Okay, so yeah, climate change and BSIP is somewhere in there. So it was page... Oh, there we are. Page 43. An updated bus service improvement plan was submitted to the DFT. It'll be interesting to get an update on that. I note that some of the local authorities next door in Dartford and Gravesham had a very successful launch of Fast Track yesterday. A big step change in what the experience of bus transport and travel experience is compared to the typical experience in Medway around vehicle types, around electric buses, around priority, around frequency, ease of ticketing, etc. I'd just be interested to get an update on where we're going on the bus service improvement plan and hope that we can hop aboard to the momentum that seems to be happening across the wider area of North Kent.
Ruth, hopefully not as many bad puns as
No,
Councillor Field.
exactly. There were quite a few there, weren't there, Chair?
There's none left. I can't get any more. Sorry. What I would like to do, if it's okay, is I will get you a briefing note on the update on the BSIP, if that's good. We are doing lots of work on it. And what I would say, it's unfortunate that Councillor Curry's left, because he is very keen that we look at buses and active travel. So we are being pushed in that direction. That's a little pun there, if that's okay. So,
that was equally poor.
That was really good.
Okay, if there are no other members, then once the Vice Chair has composed himself, perhaps we could make a proposal.
I would love to make a proposal. So the committee is asked to consider the Q4 2022-23 performance against the measures used to monitor progress against the council priorities and consider the strategic risk summary. I think there were a few things to respond upon as well. So there was an issue around randomising the review of the littering locations. There was one-page summary of the targets that Councillor Cook raised. There was reviewing the dog fouling enforcement, I think I picked up on. There was a reviewing of the sweeper sequencing. An update, which might be at a later date, around the QR codes usage. And then there was briefing notes just promised just then on the 5 routes and on the BSIP.
Citizens.
And the citizens. And citizens.
Correct, yeah. And we did have... So, Chair, is it okay if obviously I'll suggest this, it'd be to the Vice Chair to kind of capture that as well. So we did say we'd have a briefing note on the citizens panel. We did say that we would follow up on the Section 106 question that was raised, what was happening with that. The idling project, we said we'd update on. We said we'd update on jobs, that question that was raised over here. I think you said the congestion routes to be fair and the bus services improvement plan, that's it.
Yeah, I think that covers it, yeah.
Yeah, I think that does.
Great. Okay. Is that seconded?
Seconded.
Thank you. Agreed?
Right.
Thank you. So we move on to item 7 on the agenda, which is the work programme, which is pages 83 to 100 on your agenda. And Nicola from Democratic Services is going to lead on this.
Thank you. The work programme is presented at Appendix A, and as set out in the report, it now includes the addition of a report on building condition surveys. The forward plan items listed in section 4.1 of the covering report were correct at the time of publication. However, the forward plan has recently been updated and the timing for some items has now changed.
Thank you. Any member?
No. To the Vice Chair.
Vice Chair?
You asking me to move?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, the committee is asked to A, agree the proposed work programme set out Appendix A to the report, including the addition of a report on building control surveys as set out in paragraph 3.2 of the report, and B, to identify any additional items for inclusion in the work programme.
Is that seconded?
Seconded.
Agreed? Excellent. In which case, that closes tonight's meeting. Thanks very much for your attendance. Oh, sorry, Councillor Hamilton, is that an AOB for us?
It is an AOB. It's a very, well, I'm afraid it is. So when I was going through the documents, it's the first time I've gone through them, and there were a number of references to briefing notes from 2021 to 2023. There were no hyperlinks. So could we please do that moving forward? And the ones that were in this pack, could we have the hyperlinks added so that we can actually read them? It was just a very small area.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, I think that's been taken on board. So, yeah, fantastic. All right, thank you very much. Good night.